going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This week we are kicking off a brand new build series on our shop truck, which is a 1970 C10. For those of you guys who have been following our channel for a while, you may remember when we took this truck in on trade when we got rid of our LS Swapped Travelall. Plus a couple bucks, but this thing was already super clean, running and driving. Matter of fact, we broke this thing in pretty hard in the back parking lot. Engine compartment is clean. It's got a small block 350. It's got an upgraded camshaft, aluminum heads, fuel injection. The only thing we're gonna be doing in here is cleaning up, doing a little housekeeping on that back firewall. But not only does this thing have to look clean and drive well, but it also has to be cool. So the stance, this thing's gotta go. It's gotta be sitting on the ground. So we got with GSI, we got a full rear C-notch with all its goodies and a front cross member, which is gonna allow this thing to lay frame. We also are going to be upgrading our brakes with all 4 big brake kit from Willwood and a brand new Dakota digital dash. Not only that, we're gonna be getting this thing back to its OEM look. We're gonna be adding our lights back on the front and rear, some trim, and a 2-tone paint job. So, Andrew and I got a bunch of work to do. Let's get this thing tore down. All right, moving along, dismantling the 70 C10. Got her up on the lift. And next up is to start taking out some of the drivetrain. So I'm gonna go ahead and start back here. We'll get this drive shaft out, get our exhaust taken out, and then just kind of keep moving through from the back to the front. We'll get that fuel cell out, start getting some of these fuel lines out of the way, you know, because we're gonna be cutting this whole section of frame out. So all this needs to come out of the way. And once we get all this out, we're gonna be going pull our motor, transmission. Then we're gonna push this puppy outside and give her a bath. And then it's time to start cutting it up.
Got the drivetrain out, engines out, transmissions out, exhaust is out. The next stage of disassembly is cleaning up the firewall. As you can see, we've got some electronics mounted up here. It is fuel injected, so it's got an atomic EFI module right here. Also, ignition box right there from MSD. Like Mikey said, we're gonna airbag this truck, so the wheels are gonna come really deep into the body, so our inner fenders are gonna come in this area. So we're gonna have to remove that stuff. We're gonna clean it up, repaint the firewall, clean up the electronics, get everything a little bit nicer. So a lot more cleaning. We also gotta unbolt the cross member from here because we're also getting a front cross member from GSI. So we gotta remove all that, clean everything up for all the welding that we're gonna do. Same thing for the rear. We're gonna start pulling off the trailing arms and get this stuff out of the way so we can make our marks, start cutting everything out, and then we'll weld it.
All right, now that we got this truck stripped down of most of the components that we need, we still obviously have to take our rear end out, get rid of our tires, our trailing arms, and some other stuff in the front suspension. But before we do so, I'm gonna go ahead and start laying out our C-notch, and we are gonna get this truck onto our chassis table. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and pull out my handy dandy directions here that we pulled offline for our GSI rear C-notch kit, and they pretty much give you all your dimensions you need to locate exactly where your C-notch is going to be. You got a couple factory notches and holes that they give you a hard dimension to use. So I'm going to go ahead and use these to just locate where it starts and where it ends. I'm going to go ahead and mark that. We're going to clean up our chassis a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and start taking out our whole front cross member, the trailing arms, our springs, shocks, rear end.
All right, we're moving steadily along on the build. Mike is taking our first step into getting this C-notch installed and getting this thing slammed on the ground. What are you doing, Mike?
I am marking the center of our rear end so we can locate our 4-link mounts and our C-notch.
Don't want it to be too far forward, too far back. And another consideration that is extremely important is your pinion angle. You don't want to have the axle pitched too far down or too far to the rear. So what we're doing right now is finding the center line of our axle, making a mark on the frame, and from that point we're going to use some of the GSI instructions that are going to let us know where to mount the 4-link mounting bracket, which is going to be located forward of the axle. And from that point we'll be able to locate the C-notch part itself, get it set on the chassis, and then we'll make our cut, remove the old chassis, and then we'll start building out to the front.
All right, our rear section is stripped and ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and jump to the front. Go ahead and get rid of our cross member, all of our steering and suspension components, and get this one cleaned up as well.
All right, moving along with our C-notch. First thing we did was locate the rear axle center line. We did this here just before we pulled the axle out, made a mark here. And then from that point, we took a measurement to locate our 4-link hangers. And then we used the 4-link hanger to make a small template, cut all the holes out so we can mount it. And then we took a measurement from this template to the actual C-notch. And once that was done, we had to do a little bit of grinding on the inner part of the frame rails to get it to sit flat down and get it set flush, so we can do a lap weld all along here on the front of the C-notch as well as on the rear. Right now, Mike is making a mark so we can pull this back off for the last time. Metal prep all these surfaces for welding, and then we'll go ahead and start welding the notch on. And once we lap weld it on the outer edges, we're gonna cut this intersection right here and right here, and then we'll cap the whole inside of this, and that'll be the new rear section of the frame. All right, our C-notch is partially installed. We've just went ahead and cut out the original frame rail section. As you can see, only thing we have left now is the GSI notch here. The next thing we have to do is plate the bottom. As you can see, all this is still open. And once we get that done, we're also gonna have to clean up the rear axle, because we have to make all the attachment points for the rear bags on here. So Mike is gonna be over here cutting all this stuff off, cleaning up the axle housing. And once we get the axle housing cleaned up, we'll get it back underneath the chassis. We'll be able to locate our pinion angle, weld on the brackets, and then we'll be able to bolt on our 4-link hangers, install the 4-link bars, and almost be pretty much set up with the whole install for the rear. Everything's looking real good, coming along nice and smooth.
All right, our C-notch is installed. Our rear end has been cleaned up. All the brackets are taken off, power washed, and cleaned up with a DA. So now we're able to move on. We're gonna get our bracketry set onto our rear end. This is for our 4-link mounts, as well as our Watts link and our bag. So we got 3 in 1 here. So we got these 2 to set. We got our 4-link brackets already mounted onto our frame side, and we got some of our link bars temporarily made up. So we're gonna use those as a reference point on where to mount our brackets onto our axle housing. So we're also gonna get our pinion angle set somewhere around 4 degrees up, and then we're gonna go ahead, get these puppies tacked onto our axle housing, and then we'll move on to our Watts link. All right, we got our rear end centered in our frame. We got this little reference point here. This is like a little weld nipple, which is pretty much the center of our axle housing. Our pinion angle is set at just about 4. We're at 3.7 up. I have my 4-link bars set at the length that they recommend, which is roughly 22 on the top. I think it was 26 on the bottom. So at this point, I can go ahead and hold up my bracketry onto my axle housing. We'll get some tacks on these, then we'll get our Watts link set as well. All right, we got our 2 brackets tacked onto our axle housing. Everything is pretty much dead on the nuts, level both ways. That's good. Our Watts link center to center, everything's fit correctly. Unfortunately, we're missing all of our bushings, so there's some play. So right now, everything's just really kind of mocked up, making sure that my bushing section in here is centered with our bolt, as well as all these heim joints. Everything's centered into our openings on our mounts. I'm feeling pretty confident, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull all this back off, slide this rear end out a little bit. I'll get these things welded on, and then we'll go ahead and get our shocks mounted. All right, we got our complete C-notch kit with our 4-link all complete in the back. We got our bags on and our shocks. So this thing is pretty much wrapped up as far as the fab work goes. That's what we're gonna leave off on this episode. So make sure you're following along, because next week we're gonna be doing a little bit more fabrication back there, like getting our bed set, our raised bed floor, as well as finding where we're gonna place that AccuAir setup. So make sure you guys are following along. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out. We'll see you guys next week.